Hello, this is Brianna Michael, and I'm going to talk about my number talk during immersion week. So, the first question says, what math strategy did you choose for your number talks for the week, and why did we choose a specific strand? Um, so I talked to my CT and we couldn't find necessarily a specific one to work on, as the students need multiple things to kind of work on. But I knew that I'm in fourth grade and that they're working on multiplication. And in order to succeed in multiplication, you need to know the basis of addition. So I picked making landmarks of friendly numbers or both. Um, and it's a category that numbers that are one away from a landmark or a friendly number. So the first thing we did was, this is day one, and I gave them 7 dots, kind of like we did in class. And I just wanted to start this out with them because I didn't know how well they knew what a number talk was, if they'd done them before, just kind of seeing where they are. And so I showed it to them for like maybe 10 seconds, not even. And then I took it away and I took a minute for them to think. And I said, okay, so what number did you see? And I had hands shoot up. And they gave me 5 different strategies, which I thought they're kind of interesting. I had one student actually, or 2 students use actual multiplication, which I thought was weird because I've never really seen that done with this type of dot strategy. So the first student, 3 times 2 plus 1 equals 7. That did give me some justification that the students do know multiplication and that they are working on it, so that was good to know. And then they did 6 plus 1 because they saw 6 piled together, then the 1 on top. They just counted the dots. 6 times 1, which I did ask that student what made them think that, and they couldn't really justify the answer. So I think they're just trying to be fancy in some ways. But then the other one, they did 2 and 2, 2, and then 1. So yeah. And then they also did 3, 2, and 2 to get 7. So I thought it was pretty successful. Other than that, I know the kids really, really enjoyed it. So then for day 2, I did this one, and I actually had to do a lot that day because my teacher was not in, so I kind of had to run the whole class. So I didn't have that many notes from it. But I decided to do this one because it's not as simple as the dot one. It's not just looking at the dots and thinking, how many dots there are, how did you find out, what did you get the dots. To work on our strategy of finding numbers that, can go up and down, trying to find landmark numbers, easier numbers. I wanted to give this one because starting out at the top, you have the 3 cherries equals 27. You could easily find that by 27 divided by 3, or you could count 9 plus 9 plus 9 equals 27, which is multiplication, 9 times 3, whatever works. That was what I wanted them to do. That was the main point, and then work their way through the problem to find the ultimate result. So I had one student write theirs down, and he didn't really show that too much work on it, but we did talk about it, and I asked them, so I gave them time to think about it. What equals the cherry, and how did you find the cherry? And a lot of students would say, well, we used multiplication, 9 times 3 to find 27, or I had one student even say that they knew that the cherry was 9, eventually, but they started out making each cherry 10 to make an easy number. They said 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 30, but they knew that shown was 27, so they subtracted 3, and they ended up subtracting 1 from 10, making that 3, and they got 9 as cherries. So I thought that was really interesting. But that was one of my higher level students thinking. But they came to the conclusion of 55, so I think they went through each one, and I would ask them questions like, Okay, so well, how did you get from here to here? And if we know that cherry is 9, okay, we plug that in. What did you do here? Did you do 24 minus 9? Or did you just keep this 9 and you kept plugging in different numbers, easy numbers? Did you plug in 10? Was that too much? Did you plug in 5? Was that too little? Just kind of seeing where their head was at. So I think it did work out. They really enjoyed doing this. I know I would come in every day and they'd be like, I can't wait for the number talk. So I thought for day 3 that I would try another one. Of course, this one is more complicated because of the bananas, if you look carefully. And I also remember doing this in class as well. So the kids were actually stumped on this one because they loved the fruit. They loved the energy was there, just like day 2. But day 3, the bananas tripped them up. And when I asked them questions, I said, okay, so let's try to figure out what the apple is. And we determined that the apple was 40. And then we went to the second row and I said, okay, probably the best way is just figure out one. Once we find out one, we'll go down to the next one. And they agreed with me. And they looked at the bananas and they classified 2 bananas as 30. So 30 plus 30 is 60. 60 plus the 40 is 100. I said, perfect. That's exactly what it is. But they didn't see 2 bananas. They just saw bananas as a whole. So when they moved down here, that's what caught them the same way. I did not really see the strategy being applied trying to find easier numbers, probably because this was more of an easier number problem. Because this was 40, this was 30, this is actually 45, come later. So they kind of, and then the grape was 20. So they already kind of had the easier numbers to help them along with it, which I think what really led to day 4 and the success in day 4, and the use of the new strategy. But with this, they got stumped, of course, because like I said, the 3 bananas versus the 2. And I had one student, and it kind of amazed me, and I didn't understand him. He would claim that 2 bananas is 30. But then he would say 3 bananas is 40, and I asked him how to explain it. And when he was explaining it, the words made absolutely no sense. We probably spent a good 5 minutes just trying to understand what he was saying. Because he said, he agreed that an apple was 40. And he said 40 plus 40 is 80, 80 plus 40, 120. No problem. Perfect. So then he took the apple and he added 40 here. And he subtracted 100 minus 40, which is 60. So then, 60 divided by 2 would be 30. So then I said, okay, if that's the case, how much is 1 banana worth? Once we realized how many bananas there were. And he said 1 banana was 10. And I said, how can that be? If you're doing 10, 20, 30, 40, altogether, that'd be 40 plus 40 that equals 80 and not 100. But for some reason, he could not wrap around it, and he would not budge on his answer. So we eventually talked through it, and I just told him, okay, this is what it is. This is, each banana is what's worth. We talked through it, we worked through it. Hoping he would gain that knowledge. But they did struggle with this one. It was kind of a complicated process, but we got through it. And this is what led me to do day 4. So day 4, we did something simple. And we just did a simple addition problem. 343 plus 167. I wanted to bump it up a little bit because we have been playing with 2-digit numbers, but I wanted to do a 3-digit. And the results were actually remarkable, I thought. The new strategy we're trying to implement, finding landmark numbers, trying to find easier numbers to work with. And they did it. And what amazed me is that they just did it on their own. All of these are students' work, and a lot of them had the same. Kara, the first one, she started out with just doing the hundreds, the 300 plus 100, because that's easy. Not everybody knows 43 and 67. They're kind of funky numbers. So 300 plus 100 equals 400. Then she added the 3 from the 300 and got 403 plus the 40. Like, she broke it down pretty well. So she got 443. Then she added the 7 and then the 60 and got 510. And I just thought that was really cool because she found those easy landmark numbers. She found those easy numbers that work for her. And then Joanna, she actually just took the 43 and the 67 and broke it down. I know a lot of kids probably just don't know how to add 43 plus 67, so I thought it was interesting that she took that and broke it down the way she did. But you can see at the end, she did that because she could use easier numbers to find the 510. And then Sierra, she actually broke it down as well. She knew 7 plus 3 was 10, and that gave her an easy, solid number. And then 10 plus 40, so she took the 40 from the 300, and that equals 50, and then she took the 60 from the 100, and then she added the hundreds to get 510. So I knew that just based off these three girls' works, I made sure I asked the class if they got the same strategies, how they explained it, even if they got one of these three, which the whole class got at least one of these three. I would specifically call them and ask how they did it, whether they did it exactly this way, or maybe they started this way and went up, whatever worked for them. I would guide them through each of my number talks. I would ask them questions like, well, how did you do this? What is your thought process? Where is your landmark number? Did you have a landmark number? What numbers are easier for you? But it was really a success, and I was really grateful for that. So the next question, so we talked about what happened in all four talks, what students said, like some examples of what students would say. They would be like, oh, I got it, like immediately. Or they would ask, well, how do I find a landmark number based off of these numbers? And, you know, for this fourth one, I didn't have to explain that. But for things like this, you know, this was the easier one. It gave us landmarks. It gave us, you know, the 40. So that was easier to explain to them. But this one was a little more difficult because it was different numbers. The clover was 5, so that was a pretty easy one. And the cherry was 9, so that's, you know, kind of hard. But explaining we were close to 9, we could bump it up to 10 as long as we switched the other number around. So it was kind of like a play and bounce around, kind of see what the students thought. But I would direct them and ask them, okay, well, here's what a landmark is. How can we compare it? And we would write some examples and talk about it before we would do our number talk. Provide examples of communication. Just did that. Like I said, I would constantly ask questions throughout. I would give them time to process, but I would think and ask. And some students, I would get up to come to the board and explain what they did, kind of teach it. Just to try every different strategy that worked for them. And then reflect on it, what I learned in completing this. What gains do you feel your students made? I really feel that my students gained this strategy. And I think this helped them with their addition, as they can incorporate this addition for their multiplication. As some, I mean, you already saw the first day they were doing that. And reflecting on the work they did afterward kind of really showed that. So I feel that they did enhance their addition skills. They enhanced their landmark numbers and making sure that they can find friendly numbers that work for them. And, you know, like having the 9 on the cherry and making it a 10. Even though I may not fully understand, well, why would you think that way? Because I think differently. It was cool to see how they could take that strategy and incorporate it in their own way. So I do think they really gained from that. There's just 3 or 4 students that struggled a little bit, but then they would explain their ways. We would go back and talk about where they might have messed up or where the error was, and we would get it. The class was so supportive with every student. It was a really good time. Why are these games? What impact did you see on the students and their attitudes? Like I said, with their attitudes in math, like probably half the class, they struggle and they fight math. But with these number talks, they were so intrigued. I mean, literally, we did it right after lunch, that little time span we had, and they're ready to go. They sat in their seats. They're ready to think, use their brain power, whatever I had for them. I mean, like I said, they would come in the morning, so excited to do this. And math wasn't even until after lunch, which is, around 12:30. So for them to be that excited and for them to feel accomplished, and they didn't always get it right. There were students that did not get the answers right, but we went over and we talked through and they understood, and they're like, thanks for going over this. Thanks for finding strategies and ways I can do this in an easier fashion. And I just really love that. They appreciate that time, whether it was 10 minutes, whether it was 5 minutes, or whether it's a 5-minute discussion on one answer, that they really enjoyed me allowing that time for them to think and take the time to discuss of what may be wrong versus what may be right. And also the teamwork the whole class had together was really interesting. What are my thoughts about implementing number talks in my future classroom? I'm totally going to use them. Like I said, kids love it. They bring the energy. It's not, a boring worksheet that they're just there to do. It's so interesting. And I think it's so fun because you can learn new strategies. I mean, like I said, just on day one, they listed 5 different strategies, and it blew my mind because I didn't think that they're going to actually be able to do that. Like, that's a lot of strategies with one number talk, and strategies I've never even thought of. So I thought it was really, really interesting. So I definitely want to use them. I want to get their brain activated. I want them to move. I want them to think different ways, open perspectives, find more than one way it works for them. So if one way fails, they got 3 backups, and just creating that teamwork with the class. And what questions do I have about number talks? Probably just finding ones that will always work with the class. I know when I've done research for finding them, it was kind of like hard to see if they could implement with certain strategies. But I think it's not more of a question, it's more of a concern, and maybe I could create my own number talks, debating on my class and seeing how they react to things. But other than that, I mean, I'm so excited to use them in my future classroom. I think they're very beneficial. And I am so glad that my students did well with this. I was kind of worried at first, especially when 3-day came and they were kind of iffy with it, but that last day they came out really strong. But yeah, so that's my number talk for immersion week. I'm sorry this video is kind of long, but I emailed you and told you that my files are corrupted for some reason, so I was lucky enough to be able to search them and find them again. If you have any questions, I hope that I answered everything correctly and efficiently. If you have any questions, please let me know and email me, and thank you.